Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to Premier League Front History with me, Tom Atkinson. Very simple, we're going to talk about Arsenal this week. Are they back with a bang? What's going on with Arsene Wenger? We're going to analyse that relationship. We're going to talk about Liverpool. Are they finally ready to be labelled as title challengers? I know we're only 6 games into the season, but some really promising signs going on over there in Merseyside. Quick couple of little discussions really about Bournemouth and Manchester United. The Wayne Rooney issue. We're going to have a little discussion about Eddie Howe. And then finally we're going to ask about the Premier League. Is this going to be the closest race for the title in recent memory? And this week I'm joined by a guest who I'll introduce shortly. But just a quick reminder, if you like what you hear today, guys, please subscribe, please like the video, feel free to share it. You can find me on Twitter, and that's at Tommy Aki, at TOMMYAKKI. Really hope you enjoy today, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Joined today by Damian from Sunderland's podcast, the Roker Report. He's going to join me today. We're going to talk about the happenings of the Premier League this weekend. So Damian, welcome to the show, mate. How are you doing?
Cheers, mate. I'm good. Nice to be here. Yeah, I'm all right. I'm a bit depressed after the match, as usual, and after the podcast, talking about it for an hour. But beyond that, yeah, I'm not bad.
Not bad. In case you can't tell, in case you're not familiar with local dialects and the mellifluous honeyed accent of the northeast maybe isn't as pronounced with Damian. And that's because Damian is actually from down south in England. He's from the Greater London area, so it's going to be interesting today to see a man from that kind of area of the world, what his opinions are on some of this weekend's fantastic games. I mean, looking at this weekend, we have the Arsenal-Chelsea game, something really big we're going to talk about, and I think that's where we're going to start today, Damian. Arsenal back with a bang. First question for you today, mate. Do you think the Arsenal fans have been harsh on Arsene Wenger? I spoke about this in another podcast I did earlier on. I said that maybe you've been a bit harsh from a Sunderland fan, you know. Never seen silverware in so long, and Arsenal haven't done badly for themselves in the last 10 years. What are your views on that?
Well, certainly. I mean, it's over the build-up of so many years, isn't it? I think that's the problem. So many expectations, and particularly when you look at their best times coming from Arsene Wenger, not so long ago, really, in a footballing sense. Do you know what I mean? And some of the great players that have come through, and even now they're just continuing their roles within football. Some have gone into punditry. They're all football personalities, and that's the sort of club that Arsenal is. It's the rich man's club, isn't it? I don't remember, but I know that back in the day, before my time, Sunderland were called the Bank of England club, and I think certainly we've been succeeded in that sense by Arsenal. But no, with Arsene Wenger, I think it is a bit. I've always felt that they were a bit. What's the word? Expectant, yes, but also spoiled in a way. Very spoiled fan base in the sense, as you say. I mean, they won the FA Cup not that long ago. Do you know what I mean? When was the last time we did that? Even that in itself, if you turn around and say, "Oh, they got the FA Cup. Oh, sweet, brilliant. Well, there you go." Yeah, I think they have been harsh on him. I think that similarly, though, he brings it on himself. He's well renowned for his for being stingy, I suppose, is the best way you could describe it in a nice way. He doesn't seem willing to push that boat out. He doesn't seem willing to make those what some might consider ridiculous signings, even though that is the world we live in now with football. And the fans hate that. They hate seeing Manchester United bring in Paul Pogba, for example, even though that in itself was a ridiculous deal. But they hate seeing things like that, or even Ibrahimovic going in there. Obviously, Chelsea bringing great players, fantastic world beaters. Do you know what I mean? And Arsenal, it seems like they're a team that, or rather, Arsene Wenger's management style seems like he's not willing to quite get that top shelf. The scouting network's very intensive. They've got a massive academy, obviously, like most clubs of their size. He seems quite happy to sort of pick and choose the occasional player, and at the end of the day, if they don't set the world on fire, he's willing to give them time because he's always given time himself. Yeah. So I think in many senses, yeah, they're a bit entitled, and they should really look at it with a sense of cynicism and think, well, look, we're consistently challenging. Even if they're not winning it, they're consistently challenging for silverware. They're consistently challenging for European football. In the Premier League, I think that's the best you can hope for.
Yeah.
If you're hoping to win the Premier League every year with your team, then it's not really, to me anyway, it's a bit plastic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If that's why you support your team, or back in the day when Man U were winning, obviously under Alex Ferguson, and it was every year, and it was just, I remember sitting there and thinking, will there ever come a time when teams like this don't dominate? Obviously we saw it last year with Leicester City. But so short to answer your question, I think they have been a bit harsh on him, but he has brought it on himself.
I think it's interesting as well, because I agree. I think if you are top four for so long, and I think Wenger needs credit for that in itself, considering we've seen Chelsea and United the last couple of seasons drop off. But if if you are in that position for so long, it must be really hard to stomach not challenging. They do challenge, but they don't. They come out with the 3-0 win against Chelsea, but then more than likely they're not really going to mount a serious title challenge this year.
No, and that'll be because of their transfer business.
And the transfer business is odd as well. I mean, you look at Sanchez and Ozil. There's a lot of money spent on those players, but I guess they're fantastic players and they do well. And today, this weekend they've both done exceptionally well with goals and assists. But it's almost like he didn't strengthen where he needed to initially. Mustafi is like a panic buy. He's a good buy, probably going to do well, but it's almost as if like the pressure gets to him and he thinks, I better appease the fans. Who's available for like a relatively good sum of money? Oh, that Mustafi guy, he'll do. He can come in.
Well, who was it that he? I can't remember which player it was, but he offered like £40 million and £1 in the end, and he got turned down straight. I can't even remember which player it was now.
Is that Lacazette from?
It could have been.
I know what you mean. Yeah, it's like.
It was the other club and the agents and that looking at him and going, "What are you doing? Just give us what we asked for. Give us the extra £2 million. What are you doing with it? Do you need to buy another ivory back scratcher?" Do you know what I mean? It's not a.
What's mental as well is when you think about, I think it was like 2 or 3 seasons ago when they threw silly money at Danny Welbeck. Poor lad, his career's I mean, he's had some bad knee injuries, but his career seems to have stagnated somewhat from then.
Well, it was interesting with Welbeck. I mean, obviously we had him on loan. He was great for us. We missed him when he was gone. And no, his career at Man U never really took off, did it? So when he went to Arsenal, he was banging in the goals for them. To his credit, until he got injured. But that was it. Until he took his first serious injury again for that club. He was on fire. So at the time, I can see what Wenger was doing. I can see him looking at him in training or looking at him in previous matches and going, yeah, he can do it. And then looking at him throughout the games he was starting and scoring almost every game in. But yeah, you can't really account for things like that, can you? Yes, you can be told that players come with a track record of injury, but that all depends on who's managing them, on how they live, on their entire outlook on life. It can be more mental than physical. Do you know what I mean? That's the reality of it. And obviously age isn't an issue now. We're seeing that more and more. So we know that the body can be kept in prime physical condition. But when that happens, when you lose a player who, as you said, you just almost panic bought, do you know what I mean? And who's then turned out to be really good, and then he's crocked, then what's your backup plan? Where's plan B?
And it feels like Wenger, a lot of the issue from the fans is the transfers, but when he looks and he sees someone like Danny Welbeck on the sideline, thinking, oh well, I'll have him back in a few months. Why should I go out and spend another 40 million on someone? Precisely,
we're seeing like a much larger version of like a micro microcosm, aren't we? That's just that's what it is. Like, why would I bother though? I could go and spend 14 million on a like-for-like player.
And what else is like? In a way, I feel sorry for Wenger because I feel like he's one of the only managers who has like financial responsibility as part of his ethos at a club. I think Arsenal, like one of the Man United, obviously pulling crazy amounts of money. But Arsenal, considering they've got a new stadium, they've bought a relatively good amount of players, they challenge top 4 every year, their bank balance looks absolutely fantastic. Not just because of like worldwide phenomenon surrounding Arsenal, it's because they're actually relatively intelligent with their finances. And
it's shrewd business sense.
It is, isn't it?
Isn't he? Their manager, the board's manager, if he subscribes to that ethos as well, all the better for them. Because they're obviously sitting there, as you say, their bank balance out. They're obviously sitting there just raking the money in and thinking, I've got no problem with this. I mean, realistically, how many of them are actually Arsenal fans?
I know.
I think that's the trouble when it comes to things like that, isn't it?
But I think, and this leads nicely into, I want to talk about Liverpool, and this leads nicely into it. The Liverpool owners, looking at those guys, the fact that they bowed down to like the Liverpool fans' wishes, and they're big owners in the Boston Red Sox over here in America, and they bowed down to Liverpool's fans' wishes when they renovated Anfield instead of trying to buy a big fancy new stadium. They said, oh well, why don't we just spend money and time on creating a better atmosphere at Anfield? So in some ways, I guess you're right, there is some kind of detachment, but I guess somebody like, and I forget his name, I totally forget his name, I'm going to have to try and quickly remember what it is, but the fact that they'll go back and they will do that, and they will actually understand what the fans want, it really does help. And I think we've seen some success from that, because Anfield seems to be rocking. Good statistic here. Liverpool have only lost one of their last 15 games at Anfield in the league. That was a 1-0 defeat at Man United in January this year. And also, that was the only home league game that they haven't scored while Klopp's been manager. What do you make of Klopp?
Well, he's fantastic, isn't he? I think first and foremost, he's a brilliant character, and that for the terraces and for the team, that's what creates a winning mentality. It creates a relaxed atmosphere where everyone can play to their strengths. The way he supports the team when they score, I mean, it's almost becoming infamous now, isn't it, in breaking his glasses every time they score a goal. And when fans and players look at that, they're just they're besotted, aren't they? It's hero status, and that's not a bad thing at all. I think that's one of the main things he brings. On top of that, obviously, having not been out of playing football himself for that long, really, in the managerial sense, he still has that connection. That sort of, he still understands the dressing room in that way. He hasn't, perhaps like Wenger has or Mourinho has, he hasn't grown detached from his dressing room, from his players, from his team, and he's part of that team. And with that sort of attitude, yeah, you can take the Premier League, can't you? You can go on, you could win. Yeah, you could win in Europe. You could. I mean, it's endless.
Do you think it's like irresponsible, or is it too soon to say that Liverpool are going to be title contenders? Because it's been a little bit hit and miss. They've looked quality, like this weekend, for example. They looked absolutely superb, but then there's been a couple of times this season where they've looked dreadful. I mean, the loss against Burnley was a real shock, to be honest. But do you think, seriously, without getting carried away, or do you think Klopp and Anfield behind Liverpool, can they actually mount a serious challenge?
I think certainly. I don't see any reason why not. I mean, I remember when they sold Suarez, and that was a massive blow to the team, and you could tell it was a massive blow to the fans as well. And he wasn't adequately replaced for a long time. I mean, what you've also got to consider is they don't rely as much on their strikers as they do on their midfield. Do you know what I mean? So when you look at, if you're looking at quality strikers within top teams that could actually score the goals and challenge for the title, if you look at their midfield, I mean, it's solid, it's creative, it's a bit flash at times, just when you need it, sort of thing. Like, yeah, I think they certainly contend for it without a doubt. I mean, everyone has blips in the road. Maybe Klopp was, I don't know, testing out a new formation when he took that bad beat, or maybe he just said the wrong thing. I mean, we all make mistakes like that, don't we? So it's been a long time since any team won the league without taking a loss. Yeah. So realistically, yeah, we could look at it, and judging from their recent run of form, I could look at them and, I mean, I'm terrified of facing them as a Sunderland fan. Do you know what I mean? I'm not looking forward to that. Whereas I remember last year and the year before, it was a very winnable fixture, I thought. You know, they'd lost that predatory status. But yeah, certainly contenders, title contenders.
Well, they have a game coming up. I'm thoroughly excited for Liverpool United this season. And I think United, if we move on and talk about United for a little while, I think United have got a real quandary, and I want to hear your opinion on this. It's just Wayne Rooney. For somebody who was so talented and did so well in the first, let's say, like 7 or 8 years of his career, until he was about 26, 27, he seems to have like peaked at that age, when you would think that's the sort of level they plateau at and continue to do well. He seems to have peaked and he seems to have troughed all of a sudden. What are your opinions on Wayne Rooney?
Well, Wayne, I think a lot of that, I would have to agree with you. He's certainly not. He's not the star that he was. I think that's the trouble, is that the FA and, the English FA and, I mean, in general, even FIFA have their claws into Rooney. Do you know what I mean? This is like they built him up from a very young age, which is a big problem with journalism in football today. We've seen loads of players fall by the wayside who could have gone on to do great things. He was fortunate enough to hold his nerve when he first broke onto the scene. But then that consecutive, we're sending Rooney away on international duty just every time, even if he's had a bad season, even if he's come back from injury, even if he hasn't scored a goal in like 4 or 5 games, we're going to have Rooney. And it was a case of, if we've got other players that could play better in that role than Rooney does, we'll just put him somewhere else.
Yeah.
And he's seen as this player that can play anywhere on the pitch, and he just can't. He can't play anywhere on the pitch. He's got 2 positions that he can play. And even then, as you say, now he seems to, since he plateaued so long ago, I mean, realistically, mate, he's just getting old, isn't he? I think he might be the exception to what I was saying earlier about age not being a problem, because he just seems. I don't
think he tried to keep his body in.
No, exactly. He's just problems on and off the pitch. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of pressure, as I say, a lot of pressure on the lad. And I say lad, he's older than me. So I agree with you. I don't think he's all that. I don't think he's the fantastic player that he's been made out to be. I don't think he's captain material. No. I would never have a conversation with Wayne Rooney and think, I'll follow you. Yeah. I'm going to follow you wherever you're going. I'd just be like, no, I'm going the other way. I can't trust you because you sound like you know nothing. But so I'd agree with you there, mate. I think Rooney's just not up to that much anymore, and I don't think he's going to get any better. I think it's time to cut losses and say goodbye.
I think it's going to be an interesting one for Mourinho to decide, because he seemed to be proverbial giving the Browners to Rooney at the beginning of the season.
I think he has to. That's what I mean. That coupled in with what I was just saying about how the media wrap themselves around a figure like Wayne Rooney and latch onto that success. And in order to be considered fair, in order to be accepted, I think even just to be accepted by your average Man U fan, you can't say anything bad about Rooney. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? They're probably frothing at the mouth if they listen to this. There's not a bad word to be said by a lot of Man U fans about Wayne Rooney. But I think that's part of it. What Mourinho's doing, like kissing his arse, is understandable to an extent, because if he turned around straight away, moved into this new club with all the expectation that's only been made worse by obviously David Moyes and Louis van Gaal. It's only made it worse, the managerial situation at Man U, and it's only made the fans more anxious to get in their next Alex Ferguson.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it might happen. I personally like Mourinho as a manager. I think he's good. I think he's terrible with people. More importantly, I think he's terrible with the press. And that's it. It seems to me very forced. Whenever he compliments Wayne Rooney, it seems like a very forced thing to do. Like, he's basically, you might as well put a gun to his head and say, look, like, you do this, or you're done. And
it's interesting because kind of moving away from Man United, but this idea that we spoke about Danny Welbeck being sort of a great player who took up a lot of injuries recently, but probably is a good player and has plenty of time to prove himself. We spoke about Wayne Rooney as being somebody who's probably on the downward trend, and maybe the fact that he isn't necessarily going to be this first team player for Man United anymore. He found himself on the bench today. United did absolutely fantastically without him. They 4-1 winners. They look fantastic. Juan Mata superb in that game, pulling the strings. But it leads nicely on this other point of Jack Wilshere has taken his route away from Arsenal to Bournemouth under Eddie Howe. What do you make of Jack Wilshere, and what do you make of Eddie Howe and Bournemouth and how they play?
Well, Jack Wilshere, I think he's one of those. He's one of those players that could have fallen by the wayside. I think he's almost in a similar. Obviously, he plays a different role, but he's almost in a similar position to where Welbeck was with Man U before Arsenal bought him. He's not getting on the team sheet, which I think is a crying shame, because he showed so much talent when he was coming up. I honestly think it was a really good move for him. I think if he'd have turned his nose up at something like moving to Bournemouth and, newly promoted club, would that have bothered him? Well, it obviously doesn't bother him. Do you know what I mean? That's the beautiful thing about it. And when you've got a player that's willing to go, all right, fair enough, I played at Arsenal for 2 years. Now Bournemouth want me, but I need to get game time. Like, you just go and do it, don't you? I think staying within the Premier League, staying at your competitive level while you're doing it, I think it was a good move from Jack Wilshere, and I'm not entirely sure if it was a good move by Arsenal, to be honest.
Yeah.
Something to say about that.
I definitely think that Wilshere deserves a little bit of praise. He's probably one of the first players I can remember in quite a while where he is like an established world class. I don't want to say world class. He's like an established good English player.
Yeah.
And for him to say like, yeah, I'm not getting enough game time at Arsenal, but don't necessarily want to leave. I want to prove myself. I'm going to go and I'm going to join a team who are classed as, and technically are worse than Arsenal. But it's interesting. I mean, he's gone there and he hasn't completed the 90 minutes yet, which I think Eddie Howe deserves some credit for that, not throwing him in and just expecting glitz.
Yeah, that would have just led to an injury or disappointment, and his confidence would have been knocked. So I think he's done well. As well,
I think Eddie Howe I think he's working wonders at Bournemouth. Fair enough. This year he spent a canny bit of money. To be honest, he spent 21 million at least on just Jordan Ibe and the young lad. I think it's Brannigan, maybe from Liverpool. He spent 21 million on those two players, which was probably a little bit of a gamble. But in general, Bournemouth look like a canny, solid outfit now. I mean, they beat Everton 1-0 at the weekend. Everton had some very good chances to win that game and do well, but you credit where credit's due. Eddie Howe's a young English manager. He has his team playing with the ball on the ground. It's slick, they move, they pass. They're always looking for that little opening, that attacking area of the pitch. What do you think of Eddie Howe? Do you think he should have got the England job? Do you think he's destined for great things? What are your opinions?
I'm a fan of giving young management a chance. I think that Eddie Howe's proven. I mean, it depends on what you're willing to consider young in management, but I would say like 30s, 40s is a very young age for most managers in this country, at least. I'm a big fan of that. And I mean, funny enough, I was looking at some of the old the Panini football stickers for the managers in their playing days, and Eddie Howe doesn't look any different. It's like everyone else, there's this drastic change, and it's just like Eddie Howe then, Eddie Howe now. This is what he looks like.
Eddie Howe the vampire. It doesn't age.
But yeah, no, he's doing a good job at Bournemouth. I think that's again similar to what I said with the. Talking about Wilshere and a player's choice of club. I mean, obviously, Eddie Howe hasn't managed any club larger than Bournemouth, but it's a great opportunity for a young manager to get the Premier League. And if you can get, I mean, as you say, he spent 21 million basically on players from Liverpool, which, I mean, Jordan Ibe, not his greatest fan. A good player, I think. Certainly got a decent work ethic. To be honest, I couldn't say I watched him enough to be any real judge, but when I have seen him play, he's looked decent, but he hasn't looked like a world beater. And I think that's the point with managers when they move into these clubs. They need to not be straight away. I mean, we spoke about it earlier on the Roker Report, and we like Moyes tearing up the squad essentially and going, no, we're going to replace everybody. He hasn't done that. He's added some real quality where it matters. He's got a couple of quality loans. Yeah, he's done a good job. He's done the sort of job that can lead to you staying up again in the Premier League. Do you know what I mean? From recently coming up in the Premier League, it's that sort of job that keeps you there, that takes you to mid-table, that doesn't have you dancing with relegation all the time, or indeed going down. So yeah, I think he's done a good job. And
it's interesting because I read midweek Jack Wilshere talking about working under Eddie Howe, and he's come out and said like he thinks there's the sort of start of something special. Not necessarily just with Bournemouth, but with Eddie Howe being in the game. Quick question, just really a yes or no answer. Eddie Howe for Arsenal manager maybe in a couple of years' time?
No, I can't see it.
No.
Do I think it should happen, or is it going to happen?
Either or.
I can't see it happening unless Arsene Wenger drops down dead. I can't see anyone going into Arsenal into that management job until he's officially deceased, like rigor mortis is set in. I don't. But similarly with the club, I think with a club like Arsenal, I don't think it would be a great idea. I mean, I was talking about giving young managers a chance, but again, at the right level. where expectations aren't that massive. I mean, if Arsene Wenger's getting all this grief from the fans, what's Eddie Howe going to get? Do you know what I mean? How many people would be seriously underwhelmed at that appointment as Arsenal fans? But would he do a good job? Arguably, everyone who's done all their badges and gets to this level could do a good job with Arsenal. I think that's a great thing about Arsenal. They've got a really malleable team.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I think anyone could come in and impose their own tactics, and the players would know what they're doing. They're consummate professionals, many of them, which is something a lot of teams lack.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think he'd necessarily be. He wouldn't be a game changer for Arsenal, and I don't think they'd hire him. Sadly, maybe in a few years, maybe in 10 years or something. Yeah.
Last football-related question I want to ask you. We spoke about Liverpool, we spoke about United, we spoke about Chelsea, we spoke about Arsenal. Some big clubs. We didn't mention Tottenham. We didn't mention Man City. We've spent some time the last couple of weeks talking about both those clubs. If I had to push you now and say, just on form right now, who do you think is going to be like a top 3 teams to battle it out at the end of this year?
But, well, between each other, yeah, certainly. I would probably say definitely Man City. I think that's a no-brainer. I don't think Arsenal are going to be in contention. It might be too early to judge, but I can certainly see a Man City, Liverpool, Man U scenario developing. Ooh. Particularly if Abramovich stays on song for Manchester United, rather. They've all got great players, they've all got great managers, and they've all got great team ethics. So I think it'll be a massive battle between those 3.
Be interesting to see how it plays out. I agree, actually. I think.
Then again, Spurs. I say you stopped me from saying Spurs. So it's like
I was just about to say Spurs are the only other team. I think.
They're looking good. They're looking good based on form. Yeah, you could easily. If we could just go purely from the form of the last few games, then yeah, I would probably replace. I'd probably replace Manchester United with Spurs, to be honest, in that order.
Yeah, I think Spurs might struggle with Harry Kane's injury if they can't get him back quick enough. I haven't seen enough of Victor Janssen to actually say, he's a ready-made replacement. So I guess
that's what happens when you beat Lee Catmull on the pitch, isn't it? It's like, I think it was he'd started 72 consecutive games for Spurs. Yeah, he did. and then Lee Catmull saw him on the pitch. He was like, "You're right, mate." That was it.
Blew him a kiss, and that was that sort of stuff.
Yeah, he just looks at him and the thing drops.
Excellent. Well, moving away from the football side of things, a couple of more personal questions, so we can get to understand a little bit of who is this complicated character of Damian.
Inside the psyche. Which one?
First of all, if you had a name, and this was hard last week, we went with what's your favourite song, and Gav came out with Bohemian Rhapsody.
That's a good call.
It's a great call, it really is. But if I have to put you on the spot now, I'm going to be a little bit nicer, and I'm going to say, can you name me an artist who you would consider your favourite musical artist? And if we can go a little bit further, what's their favourite song? What's your favourite song by them?
It would have to be, if I had only one to choose, I would have to say Pink Floyd. And the song, that again is a toughie. That's a toughie. It would be, it could be "Wish You Were Here," but that's quite a popular one. That's if you're like past the age of 40, then you claim that's one of your favourite songs. But I'm not. So anything before their last album. Their last album was ridiculous. It was just so bad.
And this was another good question I thought last week. I came up with Lorik Cana as my answer, former Sunderland hardman. But if you were stranded on a desert island, which one footballer, past or present, would you take with you? He's nodding along here, I can see.
I already know.
He already knows who it is.
Mario Balotelli.
Balotelli?
I'll take Mario Balotelli with me.
Why on earth
can you imagine the fun you'd have with Mario Balotelli? I swear, like, within 10 minutes of realising that he was stranded on a desert island, he'd have, like, macro-made himself a bandana and a pirate flag or something like that, found some rum unaccountably and just proceed to get pissed and set off fireworks.
Assumes the role of Johnny Depp.
Yeah, he just that's exactly the sort of person that Mario Balotelli is. Plus, you could always, like, if there are any wild animals in there, you can always get him to, like, flex his muscles at them and give them, like, a scary look.
Give them the why always me.
Set Mario on them. Go on, Mario.
That's great. I just love you. Before I even finished asking that question, you were just like, the nod was like, I know.
Yeah, it's there. It's there. Every time I win on the Super Six, every time I'm top of the league, that's the picture I send. Like the Balotelli sliding on his knees with the "Why Always Me" T-shirt underneath it. That's class act. Before he stopped scoring goals, of course.
I think if you had to push me for the favourite musician, a little bit of a fan of the. I don't even want to say older stuff, because the newer stuff, older stuff has like this negative connotation. Newer stuff means like, oh, new and shiny and sleek, but most of the new stuff out at the minute's absolutely shite, in my opinion. So I think if I had to pick one artist, I'd go for David Bowie.
Rest his soul.
Yeah. That, honestly, this last year with the amount of celebrity deaths being shocking, but I think David Bowie and Alan Rickman, probably a close one.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. There's been so many. I could reel them off. Like, I think it all started last year when I forgot his bloody name now. How terrible is that? Talking about the dead, and I can't remember what his sudden name is. Sky at Night. What's his bloody name?
Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
Exactly. It's terrible, isn't it? He's on the Games Master.
I know.
Bill Oddie. I'm not that cut up about Bill Oddie, to be honest. Bill Oddie can do what he wants. I don't think I'll shed it. It's no offence to you, Bill Oddie, if you're listening. I'm sure you're a nice guy, but you sound fucking boring, mate. It's like bird watching. Come on.
I've been thinking as well. It's kind of Bill Oddie related, I guess. Again, if I was stuck on a desert island with someone,
don't say Bill Oddie.
Who's the other person I'd pick? No, it wouldn't be Bill Oddie. It's like, oh, there's a rare vulture. Nice one, Bill. Can you kill it? No, shut up.
It might be good to cut up and store somehow if you figure out where to store.
Bill Oddie, succulent treat. He'd be alright for that. But I think if I had to choose another footballer,
I wonder if he's grain fed. That's a question.
As long as he's not antibiotic fed, I'll eat him. But I think if I had to pick another footballer, I think Roy Keane. Could be a really good shout as well.
I don't know. I think I'd be scared.
If you're not pulling your weight, though, because I think about survival is all about like, can you pull your weight in that situation? And I think Roy Keane's the kind of bloke who'd kick you up the arse. He'd survive. Whether I would, I don't know. I think
if you pissed him off a little bit too much, you might end up seeing him like sailing away from the desert island using your body as a raft.
And I just keep thinking, I don't know if you've watched Stranger Things, but there's a creature in this TV show called the Gorgoron, and it's this like big monster thing. And when I was thinking this week about who I was going to ask for you to be the Premier League, the football that be stuck on an island, I was watching this Stranger Things and this creature. And I was thinking, Roy Keane would not be fazed by that, would he? He'd come in, career-ending injury, tackle on this Gorgoron creature, just be laying there squealing. He'd probably just bend over and whisper something in his ear before he was sent off. Just that sort of bloke, like. Yeah,
I felt bad for Roy Keane. I read his autobiography. If you haven't, you should. I would recommend that.
Yeah, I've read it.
Although it is it's very ghost written, if you know what I mean, because there's only per chapter there's only 2 or 3 lines that are direct quotes from him. They haven't been sort of edited out and things like that. I felt well bad for him. I think he got a really hard time. He's got his own personality. He's got his way of being, and he doesn't stand for nonsense, does he? He's like, he'd make an excellent headmaster, like back in the day. He just won't tolerate any guff from anyone.
You know what's amazing as well? I was thinking about when I'm thinking about Roy Keane this week. I think he coined the term the prawn sandwich brigade. I think he came out with the prawn sandwich brigade. And
he was talking about, in that autobiography, he said about walking into the Sunderland dressing room for a match. I can't remember which match it was, and everyone was listening to ABBA. It was like ABBA blaring through the speakers in the dressing room, and he's just like, and all he had to say about it was, quote, fucking ABBA, unquote. And that was it. Do you know what I mean? And then he's like, this is a man's game. This is a game for men. We're going out there to fight. And he's just sitting here listening to ABBA and just kicked off with the dressing room, which I think is brilliant.
So when I'm stranded on this island with Roy Keane, we cannot sing ABBA.
Don't listen to or sing the ABBA songs.
Great to know. And on that note, I think going to sort of round things up. So, Damian, thank you very much, mate, for joining me this week. Ladies and gentlemen, you can find Damian on Twitter. Damian, what is your Twitter handle?
Rastrentish.
That's at Rastrentish. Damian writes very often for the Roker Report. fantastic writer. Recently had a piece in The Love Supreme about how he came to fall in love with Sunderland. Another absolutely superb read. If you can find that somewhere, I definitely recommend that you read it. Sums up everything it means to be a football fan in general, not necessarily just for Sunderland, but in general. Absolutely wonderful read. Damian, once again, thank you very much, mate.
Thank you for having me, mate. Good times.
All the best for the rest of the year, mate.
Thank you. You too. I'm sure I'll see you before then, but
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. Thank you so much for listening in, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.